What's up, everybody? Welcome to Botchilism. I'm Bob Botchie. I'm your host. We're going to do something a little different today. I'm not just going to sit here and talk. I'm going to do something for the home cooks. I'm going to show you some easy things to just make food a little better. Just some real easy, basic cooking techniques for the home cook. So we're going to do some demos. I'm going to show you how to sear a steak, how to season a steak, proper resting techniques, shit like that. So be fun. You know what I mean? Cool. All right, so I want to teach you some basics. So one of the first things you learn in culinary school is the safest, easiest way to dice an onion. So I'm going to show you the simple technique of dicing an onion, but I'm going to show you two different ways. A couple of times I've talked about how it's easier to cut yourself with a dull knife. So I intentionally didn't sharpen this knife for a really, really long time. It's really dull, because I want to show you what it looks like when you're using a dull knife compared to a sharp knife. I think it's important. I know I talked about it, but I thought it was important to show you. That's the whole reason we're doing all these demos, is basically because of this one. So I'm going to use the sharp knife to cut this onion in half first, because I don't really want to use the dull knife, but I'm going to show you how anyway. So I also have a little trash bowl over here. So when you cut the onion in half, when you dice it, you want to look for this. This is the root. So the root is the part you want to keep intact, because that's going to hold the onion together while you cut it. We're going to cut off this end. Well, let me show you with the dull knife. So as you can see, I really got to push, which is not good. You don't want to push. All right, so we're going to pull this piece of skin off, and then this is the piece of onion we really want to work with. You get all the skin off of here because it keeps it from. It's really slippery with the skin on, and you can't get a good grip. So it's very dangerous. So you want to make sure that you get it nice and dry and get all that skin off of there so you're not hurting yourself. So the way I do it is I typically go horizontally first. And as you can see, with the dull knife, I really got to put a lot of effort into it. And I'm keeping my fingers up away from the knife so I don't cut myself. So with this dull knife, I'm really, really sawing at it, and that's definitely not something you want to do. So then you're going to go down through the top. Pretty evenly spaced for the size of dice that you want. Now be very careful on these last couple of cuts. Go very slowly, because you got to hold it together. You don't want it to wobble all over the place, so you're not going to cut yourself. This is safety first, you know what I mean? So now what we're going to do is we're going to run it through the top, but because it's a dull knife, what I was talking about is you're going to see that the onion's going to start to separate as I cut it, because I have to push. I'm not just sliding through, so you'll see the edges start to separate, and I'm really, really pushing. So that is the safest, easiest way to dice an onion. But now I'm going to show you how to do it with a sharp knife, so you can see, what it's supposed to look like. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm not going to do anything any different except use a sharp knife this time. So again, we're going to look for the root, and I cut it kind of thin, so it might be hard to tell which one is the root. So if you pull at it, you'll see. If you pull this back a little, you'll see the root is down here. Okay, you always want to leave the root intact, because that's what holds your onion together. Take out any loose pieces. So this is like a world of difference. I'm not going to push this time. I'm going to let the knife do all the work. There. So this time, if you watch, right through. Nice and easy. I'm not pushing hard. I'm just sliding the knife back and forth, letting the knife do all the work. Same with this. Let the knife do the work. I'm using the point of the knife because that's the sharpest part of the knife. I'm just running it through. I'm not pushing at all. And the same thing's going to apply to when I cut it like this. Just slide the knife, and it naturally just glides right through the onion. I'm not pushing. It's not spreading out. And there you go. Okay, so the most important step when you're searing a steak is to get all the excess moisture off the outside. If there's excess moisture on the outside, you're more steaming it than you are searing it, so you're not going to get that golden color, the color you want. So I usually just wrap it in a paper towel like this, and I let it sit for about 15-20 minutes, soak up all that extra moisture. So once it's dry, I usually just open up the paper towel, leave it right in there. We're gonna season it. Now, don't be afraid to aggressively season it. Steak likes salt. So I don't know if you can see really well, but I usually stay about that high. The higher you are, the more it spreads out when you season. You know, if you season in here, you get in one little surface area, but when you bring it up, you get the whole thing. So you can, you know, it's more evenly distributed. So as you can see, there's a good amount of seasoning on there. It's good. You want a lot of salt, want a lot of pepper before you sear it. Some people made a whole career out of seasoning things. And just as simple as that. Just get full coverage with both salt and pepper. Pat it down, good to go. So when it comes to searing, I like to use a cast iron pan. It just gets the best sear. It holds the heat the best. And you get to know your pan. So you know where hot spots are. And you know, that's something you got to learn as you use the pan, where it gets hotter and where it gets colder. It's trial and error. It's just simply figuring it out. I don't like it on high heat. I put it about 3/4 of the way, put it medium high, and then I just let it sit for 7 to 8 minutes so it gets nice and hot. And then put a nice, about 2 tablespoons, 3 tablespoons of oil in there. Like to spread it around, get it nice and even. And you'll know that the oil is ready to cook with if you look in the pan and you see the oil moving. That means it's ready to cook with. So you give it a minute before. You don't just put the oil in and throw the meat in, because the temperature of the oil is going to come down as soon as you put the meat in there. So you want to make sure it's good and hot. So gonna put it down. You want that sizzle. It shouldn't sizzle too. The way I describe it is it shouldn't sound angry. If you put it in and it sounds angry, your heat's up too high. It should sound like this. It should sound nice and complacent and like it's doing its job, nice and smooth. So you want to make sure it's not sticking, all right? Don't pull it all the way up. Just give it a little rock back and forth. Don't play with it too much. Let it sit, let it sear, let the pan do its job. You want a nice golden brown sear on both sides. So don't move it around the pan too much. Let it sit, let the pan work. Patience is key when you're doing a steak. Let it sit, because if you're moving it around, it's not going to cook evenly, it's not going to cook efficiently. And I like to, see what's starting to get brown, I like to move it halfway through so we get some even cooking. I'm actually going to turn it up just a hair. So that's about the color you want. You want like a nice golden brown. Flip it over. You don't have to leave it. This time we're just going to leave it like this. I got the oven preset at 400 degrees. We're just going to sear this for a minute or two on this side, and then we're going to put it in the oven, and we're going to finish it in the oven. It's going to go in the oven. It's a little bit thick, so probably about 4 minutes. But you want it at about 120 degrees, so use a thermometer. I'm not going to, but when you learn how to touch it to see how done it is, use a thermometer first. Get it to the temp you want, and then learn what it feels like. It's tough to learn. It's tough to learn how it feels unless you know that it's right. So don't hesitate to use a thermometer. There's nothing wrong with using a thermometer. It's getting a little hot, and so now we're going to throw it in the oven. What's up, kid? Do you love your hometown and want to represent it to the fullest? Of course you do, bud. Whether you're going to the spa, running the dunks, or driving down the Cape for the weekend, Boston Bread is the perfect gear to keep you looking wicked fresh, dude. Go to bostonbread.com right now and enter offer code Botchilism to get 10% off your first order. That's BOTCHILISM for 10% off, and remember the motto, guy. Boston born, Boston bred, and when we die, we'll be Boston dead. Okay, so this is the asparagus that we're going to serve with the steak, and it's important. If you look at it, this end is I mean, asparagus is fibrous anyway. It's got a lot of fiber in it, the stringy strands. But down here, the base, the root of it, is almost inedible. So I usually go up about 2 inches. Just cut it all off right there at about 2 inches. So you still have the stalk. The way I'm cooking it, I don't have to peel it because I'm gonna cook it a certain way. So that's it. That's your asparagus right there. So in a professional kitchen, when we're working with vegetables and produce, we usually, especially green ones, I have this asparagus here. So normally we'd throw this in boiling water and then take it out and throw it in an ice bath. We call that blanching, shocking. So I'm going to do it quicker. I'm going to do it in the pan. At home, there's no reason to do an ice bath. You can do it just like this. So the pan's nice and hot. I'm going to put a good amount of oil in there and let that oil heat up. Like I said before, you can see it move and you know it's hot enough. So we're going to throw that asparagus right in there. Shake it around a little bit. Get a good coat. Get some oil on there. We're not going to season it yet because I'm going to put water in here and we're going to steam it. So if you steam it after you season it, all that flavor is going to get condensed and it's going to get concentrated, and you don't want it. You don't want to season it first. We'll season it after we steam it. Okay. So it's nice and hot now. So we're going to throw a little bit of water in there. Then we're going to cover it. We're going to leave it like that. Shake it around a little bit. Get it to even out. That's angry sounding. I know I said it shouldn't sound angry, but when you're steaming stuff, it's pretty angry, so that's okay. You should already smell that asparagus, so you know it's blooming. It's great. Then we're just going to leave it like this until all the water evaporates. You don't have to leave the lid on the whole time. Just keep an eye on it to make sure that there's still water in there. It'll evaporate quicker when you take the lid off, because right now it's holding in all that condensation and the steam. So we're steaming it from both sides right now. All right, so this is where we want it. All that water's gone. And now we're just back down to asparagus. I'm gonna throw a little bit of butter in there. I'm gonna throw a good amount of salt, a good amount of pepper. And that's it. Move it around until that butter melts. Once that butter's melted, it's done. That's it. Keep it moving so it doesn't get overheated. And as you can see, that butter's disappearing. It's always a good practice to use a towel when you touch the handle of any pan. It becomes second nature when you're working in a professional kitchen. It just keeps you from burning yourself. All right, so the butter's all melted. We're gonna shut off the heat. That's it. All right, so once you're done searing the steak, the most important step once it comes out of the oven is to let it sit on a cutting board and what we call rest. We're resting the meat, because cooking the meat releases all the juices. You can see here, no matter what, you're gonna lose a little bit of juice, but cooking the meat releases all the juices. So when you take it out of the oven, all those juices are fluid and they're ready to flow. So if you put it on the cutting board and let it rest, you should rest it for as long as you cook it. So if you say we cooked it for 9 minutes total, then we rest it for 9 minutes, and all those juices get sucked back into the meat and all that flavor, and it just comes back into the meat. So if you cut it too soon, you're gonna lose all that moisture, you're gonna lose all the juices, you're gonna lose all that flavor, and no matter how perfectly you cooked it, if you cut it too soon, you're going to ruin it. You're just going to lose all the moisture. And then, you know, you don't have to slice it. I'm just going to slice it to show you what it looks like inside. You can serve it just like this, or you can slice it. But if you're going to slice it, cut it across the grain. So you cut it like that. See, you got a nice little medium rare there. So we're going to keep cutting it. So there you go, you got all that beautiful medium rare ready to serve. All right, so the only thing left to do is plate. So we're gonna take our beef, we're gonna kind of fan it out a little bit like a restaurant presentation, so everyone can see how well you cooked it. Well, how perfectly you cooked it, not well done. And then we're just gonna put a little bit of that asparagus right there. There you go, perfectly plated. There you have your steak and asparagus. All right, follow us on all the social media platforms. We got TikTok, we got Instagram, it's Botchilism, Botchilism. And if you have stories, if you were in the restaurant business and you want to share some stories with us, please email us. We'll read them on the air, or you can come on the show, maybe tell it yourself. It's Botchilism Podcast at gmail.com.